The gunshot echoed off the concrete walls of the hospital parking garage like thunder trapped in a cave. I didn't think, didn't hesitate, didn't consider the consequences of my actions. Years of emergency training had hardwired my response. Move toward danger, not away from it. When I saw the well-dressed man stumble, when I saw the bloom of crimson spreading across his expensive white shirt, every instinct screamed at me to help. The second gunshot came as I was already in motion, sprinting across the oil-stained concrete toward the fallen stranger. I heard the bullet whistle past my ear, felt the displaced air ruffle my hair. But momentum carried me forward. The third shot found its mark. Fire exploded through my left arm as the bullet tore through muscle and sinew, spinning me sideways. I hit the concrete hard, my knees scraping against the rough surface. But somehow I kept moving. Crawling now, my injured arm hanging useless at my side, leaving a trail of blood as I dragged myself toward the man who was trying to push himself upright against a concrete pillar. "Stay down," I gasped, reaching him just as another shot rang out. This one went wide, chipping concrete inches from his head. "You're bleeding. Let me help." His eyes, dark brown and startlingly alert despite the blood loss, fixed on my face with an intensity that made my breath catch. Even wounded, even in mortal danger, he radiated a kind of controlled power that seemed to bend the air around him. This wasn't a random victim of street violence. This was someone important, someone dangerous, someone who had enemies willing to kill in broad daylight. "You're hit," he said, his voice surprisingly steady as his gaze took in the blood soaking through my scrubs. His accent was subtle but unmistakable, cultured and precise. "You need to get out of here." "Not happening." I pressed my good hand against the wound in his shoulder, applying pressure even as my own injury throbbed with each heartbeat. "I'm a nurse. This is what I do." The sound of screeching tires echoed through the garage as the shooter's vehicle fled the scene. In the sudden silence that followed, I could hear my own rapid breathing, the stranger's labored gasps, and the distant wail of sirens growing closer. Someone had called 911. "What's your name?" I asked, partly to keep him conscious, and partly because something about this man demanded to be known. Even bleeding and vulnerable, he commanded attention in a way I'd never encountered. "Marcus," he said, his dark eyes never leaving my face. "Marcus Castellano." His uninjured hand came up to cover mine where I pressed against his wound, his fingers warm and surprisingly gentle. "And you're my guardian angel." I almost smiled, despite the pain radiating through my arm. "Maya Rodriguez, and I'm just a nurse who was in the wrong place at the wrong time." "No," he said with absolute certainty. "You were in exactly the right place." His thumb traced across my knuckles, a gesture so intimate it sent an unexpected shiver through me. "What made you run toward gunfire instead of away from it?" The question hung in the air as paramedics burst through the stairwell doors, their equipment clattering against the concrete. The next few minutes became a blur of activity as they assessed our injuries, started IVs, and prepared us for transport. But even as they worked, I remained conscious of Marcus's gaze on my face, studying me with an intensity that felt like a physical touch. "2 GSWs, the lead paramedic called to his partner. "Male, approximately 35, shoulder wound, stable vitals. Female, mid-20s, through and through to the left arm, also stable." As they loaded me onto a stretcher, Marcus reached out with his uninjured hand, catching my wrist. "Maya." My name sounded different in his voice, weighted with meaning I didn't understand. "I won't forget what you did." The ambulance ride passed in a haze of pain medication and concerned questions from the paramedics. Had I seen the shooters? Did I know the other victim? Was there anyone they should call for me? I answered as best I could, though something instinctive held me back from mentioning that Marcus had seemed to know this attack was coming. The way he'd moved, The lack of surprise in his eyes suggested this wasn't random violence. By the time we reached Metropolitan General, where I'd worked night shifts for the past 4 years, word had already spread through the emergency department. Maya Rodriguez, reliable nurse Maya who never missed a shift and never complained about the long hours, had been shot playing Good Samaritan in the parking garage. Dr. Henderson, the attending physician, personally oversaw my treatment. "What were you thinking, Maya?" he asked as he examined the bullet wound, his voice mixing professional concern with personal worry. "Running toward gunfire? That's not like you." "I saw someone who needed help," I said, wincing as he probed the edges of the wound. "I'm a nurse, Dr. Henderson. I couldn't just walk away." "The police want to talk to you when you're feeling up to it," he said, beginning to clean and dress the injury. "Apparently the man you helped is. Well, let's just say he's someone important. There are already reporters calling, wanting to interview the nurse who saved Marcus Castellano's life." Something cold settled in my stomach. Reporters, publicity. The last thing I needed was my face plastered across news outlets, especially now when I was trying so hard to keep certain aspects of my life private, like the pregnancy I'd only just confirmed 3 weeks ago, like the father who disappeared the moment I'd mentioned the possibility of a baby, like the fact that I was barely making ends meet on a nurse's salary and couldn't afford to miss work. "Can't they just say I prefer not to be named?" I asked. Dr. Henderson's expression grew sympathetic. "Maya, you saved the life of Marcus Castellano. The man owns half the real estate in the city, sits on the boards of multiple charitable foundations, has connections that reach into every level of government and business. This isn't going to stay quiet." The weight of his words settled over me like a lead blanket. I'd thought I was helping an injured stranger. I hadn't realized I was inserting myself into the life of someone who lived in a completely different world from mine. Someone whose enemies were apparently willing to commit murder in broad daylight. "The good news," Dr. Henderson continued, "is that the bullet went clean through. No bone damage, minimal muscle involvement. You'll need to keep the arm immobilized for a few weeks, but you should make a full recovery." A few weeks. I tried to calculate how much sick time I had saved up, whether I could afford to take the time off, what would happen to my patients. The irony wasn't lost on me that getting shot while helping someone else might cost me the job I needed to survive. "There's something else," Dr. Henderson said, his voice dropping to a more confidential tone. "Mr. Castellano has been asking about you. He's requested to see you once you're stable." "He's still here?" "Executive wing," Dr. Henderson confirmed. "His injuries weren't as severe as yours, actually. The bullet mostly grazed his shoulder. But he's refused to leave until he can speak with you." I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind not just physical pain, but a growing awareness of how dramatically my life had just changed. I'd gone from anonymous night shift nurse to the woman who saved Marcus Castellano's life in the span of an hour. And based on the expensive suits I'd glimpsed on the men hovering near the executive wing, Marcus Castellano was not the kind of man who forgot debts. "Maya?" Dr. Henderson's voice brought me back to the present. "Are you all right? You look pale." "Just tired," I said, though it was more than that. Something deep in my bones told me that accepting Marcus Castellano's gratitude would come with complications I wasn't prepared for. But I'd already made the choice when I'd run toward those gunshots instead of away from them. "Send him in," I said finally. "Let's get this over with." Dr. Henderson nodded and stepped out, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the growing certainty that nothing in my life would ever be the same. Through the small window in my room, I could see the parking garage where it had all started, where I'd made the split-second decision to risk my life for a stranger who was about to become much more than that, whether I wanted it or not. The soft knock on my door came exactly 10 minutes later. I'd been watching the clock, trying to prepare myself for whatever conversation was about to happen. But when Marcus Castellano stepped into my room, Nothing could have prepared me for the impact of his presence in the small space. He'd changed out of his blood-stained clothes into a charcoal suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. His left arm was in a professional sling, and I could see the edge of bandages beneath his collar, but he moved with the fluid grace of a predator despite his injuries. More than that, he carried himself with an authority that seemed to command the room itself. Maya. My name on his lips sounded different than when the doctors said it, weighted with meaning I couldn't interpret. How are you feeling? Like I got shot, I said, then immediately regretted the flippant response. Something about this man made me want to be careful with my words. His mouth curved in what might have been amusement. A fair assessment. He moved closer to my bed, his dark eyes studying my face with uncomfortable intensity. The doctors tell me you'll make a full recovery. That's what they're saying. I shifted uncomfortably under his gaze, suddenly aware of how I must look in a hospital gown with my hair tangled and my face pale from blood loss. I'm glad you're all right. Am I? He asked quietly, and something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. Maya, do you understand what happened today? Someone tried to kill you, and I got in the way, I said. Wrong place, wrong time. No. He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that seemed to fill the small room. You made a choice. You saw danger and ran toward it instead of away. You put yourself between me and those bullets deliberately. The way he said it made it sound like something momentous, something that changed everything between us. But I was just a nurse who'd reacted on instinct. Wasn't I? I would have done the same for anyone, I said. I don't think that's true. His uninjured hand came up to touch my face, his fingers tracing the line of my cheek with surprising gentleness. I think you recognize something in me, Maya. The same thing I recognized in you. Which is that we belong to each other now. The words hung in the air between us, simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. You saved my life. You bled for me. That creates a bond that can't be broken. I should have laughed at the dramatic declaration. Should have dismissed it as the ramblings of a man still in shock from being shot. But something in his dark eyes, something in the way his thumb brushed across my cheekbone, made it impossible to treat his words as anything less than a solemn vow. I don't even know you, I whispered. You will, he said with absolute certainty. Maya Rodriguez, 26 years old, night shift nurse at Metropolitan General for 4 years. No family in the city, no significant relationships. He paused, his gaze dropping briefly to my midsection before returning to my face. Recently pregnant, approximately 8 weeks along. Father of the child unknown or absent. My blood ran cold. How do you know that? I make it my business to know everything about people who matter to me, he said simply. And you, Maya, matter to me more than you can possibly imagine. The possessive certainty in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it sent a warm shiver through my body that I didn't want to acknowledge. For months, I'd been struggling alone with the knowledge of my pregnancy, working extra shifts to save money while trying to figure out how I'd manage as a single mother. The idea that someone might want to share that burden, might want to protect and provide for me, was seductive despite every rational warning in my head. What do you want from me? I asked. Marcus smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. Everything, he said simply. But we'll start with letting me take care of you. You're injured because of me, Maya. That makes you my responsibility. I can take care of myself. Can you? His eyebrow arched slightly. How much sick leave do you have saved up? How will you pay your bills while your arm heals? What happens when your pregnancy becomes obvious and your employer starts looking for reasons to let you go? Each question hit like a physical blow because I'd been asking myself the same things. The harsh reality was that I lived paycheck to paycheck, with no safety net and no family to fall back on. Getting shot while helping a stranger might have been heroic, but it was also financially catastrophic. "I have a proposition for you," Marcus continued. "Come home with me. Let me take care of you while you recover. Let me provide for you and your child. And in exchange?" His smile was subtle but unmistakable. "Your company, your trust, your willingness to let me be the man who protects you." The offer hung between us, simultaneously terrifying and tempting. Protection from a man like Marcus Castellano would certainly be effective, but it would also come with complications I couldn't even begin to imagine. Men like him didn't offer anything without expecting something in return. But as I lay in that hospital bed, my arm throbbing with pain and my future more uncertain than ever, the alternative seemed worse. Struggling alone, raising a child in poverty, always wondering if I'd be able to provide enough. "I need time to think," I said finally. Marcus nodded as if he'd expected this response. "Of course. But Maya?" He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "Don't take too long. You saved my life today. Now, let me save yours." As he straightened and moved toward the door, I called after him. "Marcus!" He turned back, and for a moment, the dangerous man with his expensive suits and mysterious enemies was replaced by someone who looked almost vulnerable. "Why me?" I asked. "Out of everyone in that garage, why did I risk everything to help you?" His smile was slow and certain. "Because you recognized what I recognized, Maya. That we were meant to find each other." He paused at the door. "The question now is what we're going to do about it." After he left, I lay staring at the ceiling, my mind racing despite the pain medication. 8 hours ago, I'd been an anonymous nurse struggling to make ends meet. Now I was the woman who'd taken a bullet for Marcus Castellano, and he was offering me a life I'd never dared to imagine. The smart thing would be to say no, to recover from my injuries, and return to my quiet, safe existence. But as my hand drifted unconsciously to my stomach, to the tiny life growing there, I realized that quiet and safe might not be enough anymore. Maybe it was time to take a chance on something dangerous. The envelope arrived exactly 72 hours after I'd been discharged from the hospital. Thick cream paper, my name written in elegant script across the front, slipped under my apartment door while I slept. No postmark, no return address, just my name in handwriting that spoke of expensive education and careful cultivation. Inside, a single sentence. "Your answer is overdue. M." I set the note on my kitchen counter, next to the collection of medical bills that had already started arriving. The irony wasn't lost on me that saving Marcus Castellano's life was going to bankrupt me. My insurance would cover the emergency treatment, but the weeks of missed work stretched ahead like a financial abyss I couldn't cross. The knock on my door came at exactly 8 p.m., 3 sharp raps that somehow managed to sound both polite and inevitable. Through the peephole, I could see a woman in an expensive coat, her dark hair pulled back in a perfect chignon, her posture radiating the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. I opened the door with the chain still attached. "Can I help you?" "Maya Rodriguez?" Her voice carried the same educated accent as Marcus's, though hers had a sharper edge. "My name is Isabella Castellano. I believe you know my husband." The words hit me like a physical blow. Husband. Marcus had a wife. Of course he did. Men like him didn't remain unmarried, didn't lack for beautiful, sophisticated women who moved in their social circles. I'd been naive to think his interest in me was anything more than gratitude mixed with guilt. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, starting to close the door. "Oh, I don't think so." Isabella's smile was sharp as a blade. "May I come in? We have quite a lot to discuss." Everything in my body screamed at me to refuse, to slam the door and pretend this conversation wasn't happening. But something in her tone suggested that wouldn't end the matter. If Isabella Castellano wanted to talk to me, she'd find a way to make it happen. I unlatched the chain and stepped back, gesturing her into my small living room. She entered with the careful grace of someone assessing enemy territory, her eyes taking in every detail of my modest apartment. The second-hand furniture, the generic artwork from discount stores, the stack of nursing textbooks on my coffee table. "Charming," she said, though her tone suggested anything but. "Very authentic." I remained standing, my injured arm supported in its sling, watching as she settled onto my couch as if she owned it. "What do you want, Mrs. Castellano?" "To understand what game you're playing, of course." She crossed her legs elegantly, her designer shoes probably worth more than my monthly rent. "It's quite clever, really. Save the life of a powerful man, get yourself injured in the process, play the brave little nurse. I imagine Marcus is feeling quite protective of you." "It wasn't a game," I said quietly. "I saw someone who needed help." "Please." Isabella's laugh was like crystal breaking. "Do you know how many attempts have been made on my husband's life in the past 5 years? 7. Do you know how many Good Samaritans rushed to help during those previous incidents? 0. The number sent a chill through me. 7 attempts. This wasn't a one-time occurrence, wasn't random violence that had somehow touched my life. This was Marcus's reality, a constant threat that surrounded him like a second skin. "So either you're incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," Isabella continued. "Or you knew exactly who he was and saw an opportunity." "I had no idea who he was," I said. And for the first time, Isabella's composed expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. "Really?" She studied my face with calculating eyes. "You're serious? You actually risked your life for a complete stranger?" I didn't respond, suddenly feeling like I was being evaluated for something I didn't understand. Isabella leaned forward slightly. "That makes you either very valuable or very dangerous, Maya. I haven't decided which yet." "I'm neither," I said. "I'm a nurse who made a split-second decision, that's all." "Is it?" Isabella's smile returned, but there was no warmth in it. "Then why has my husband been having you watched since the moment you left the hospital?" My blood turned to ice. "What?" "Oh, yes. Did you think he'd just let you walk away? Marcus doesn't forget debts, Maya, and he certainly doesn't abandon people who interest him." She paused, watching my face carefully. "Tell me, have you noticed anyone following you? A black sedan that appears wherever you go? Men in expensive suits who seem to be shopping for the same groceries you need?" I thought of the past 3 days, the strange sense I'd had of being observed. The man in the pharmacy who'd seemed too well dressed for the neighborhood. The car I'd seen parked across from my building multiple times. I'd dismissed it as paranoia brought on by trauma, but apparently my instincts had been correct. "Why?" I whispered. "Because you saved his life, and now he considers you his responsibility." Isabella's tone grew colder. "Do you understand what that means, Maya? Once Marcus Castellano decides you belong under his protection, you never stop belonging to him." The possessive phrasing made my stomach clench. "I don't belong to anyone." "Don't you?" Isabella stood, moving to my window and peering through the blinds. "There's a man across the street reading a newspaper. Same man who was there yesterday when I had you surveilled. Would you like to know his name? Or shall I tell you about the tracking device they placed on your car while you were sleeping?" The room seemed to tilt around me. "That's impossible." "Is it? Marcus, my husband whom you saved so heroically, is not just a businessman, Maya. He's the head of one of the most powerful crime families in the city. When he says he protects what belongs to him, he means it quite literally. Crime family. The words echoed in my head, reshaping everything I thought I knew about Marcus Castellano. The expensive suits, the enemies willing to commit murder, the way he'd spoken about debts and belonging. I'd saved the life of a Mafia boss. "I can see you're beginning to understand," Isabella said, returning to sit across from me. "So let me be very clear about your situation. You can't go back to your old life, Maya. The moment you threw yourself between Marcus and those bullets, you stepped into our world. And our world doesn't let people leave." "I never asked for any of this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, but you made your choice. And now you're carrying Marcus's child." The words hit me like a slap. "What?" Isabella's smile was triumphant. "Oh, you didn't think we knew? Marcus has been watching you for 3 days, Maya. My people have been watching you for 1. Did you really think we wouldn't notice the prenatal vitamins? The morning sickness? The way you keep touching your stomach?" My hand moved instinctively to my midsection, confirming her observation even as I tried to deny it. "The baby isn't—" "Please, let's not insult each other with lies." Isabella leaned forward. 8 weeks pregnant, according to my sources, which means conception occurred right around the time Marcus was having his. Difficulties with the Romano family. The timing is quite convenient. She thought Marcus was the father. The assumption was so wrong it would have been laughable if it weren't so terrifying. The baby's father was David, a resident at the hospital who disappeared the moment I'd mentioned the possibility of pregnancy. But Isabella's mistake gave me leverage I hadn't realized I possessed. "What do you want?" I asked again. "For you to disappear," Isabella said simply. "Take whatever money Marcus offers you and leave the city. Start over somewhere else. Raise your child quietly, and never contact my husband again." "And if I refuse?" Isabella's expression hardened. "Then you'll discover that being under Marcus's protection doesn't protect you from everyone, Maya. My husband may consider you his responsibility, but I consider you a threat, and I deal with threats very differently than he does." The promise of violence hung between us, barely veiled beneath her polite tone. But there was something else in her voice, something that sounded almost like desperation. Isabella Castellano was afraid of me, afraid of what I represented to her husband. "He cares about you," I said, testing my theory. "Marcus is my husband," she said sharply. "We've been married for 8 years. We have a life, a family, a business built together. Do you really think he'd throw all of that away for a nurse from the wrong side of town?" But even as she said it, I heard the uncertainty in her voice. Whatever relationship she had with Marcus, it wasn't as secure as she wanted me to believe. "I think," I said carefully, "that your husband is capable of making his own decisions about what he wants." Isabella's composure cracked slightly. "You have no idea what you're playing with, Maya. This isn't some romantic fantasy where the dangerous man falls in love with the innocent girl. This is real life, where innocent girls who get in the way tend to disappear." She stood abruptly, smoothing down her coat with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly. "You have 24 hours to consider my offer. After that, the choice will be taken away from you." She moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at me with something that might have been pity. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I hope you're smart enough to take the money and run. Because if you stay, if you let Marcus pull you deeper into his world, you'll discover that the bullet you took for him was nothing compared to what's coming." The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving me alone with the weight of her words and the growing certainty that my life had just become infinitely more complicated. I moved to the window, peering through the blinds at the man Isabella had mentioned. He was still there, still reading his newspaper, still pretending not to be watching my building. As I watched, he glanced up at my window. and for a brief moment, our eyes met. He smiled and tipped his hat, a gesture so casual it was almost mocking. My phone rang, the sound making me jump. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but somehow I knew who it would be before I answered. Maya. Marcus's voice was warm, concerned. I hope I'm not calling too late. Your wife was just here, I said without preamble. The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had changed, become harder. What did she say to you? That I should take whatever money you offer and disappear. I kept my voice steady with effort. That being under your protection doesn't protect me from everyone. Another long pause. Maya, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Pack a bag with whatever you need for a few days. My men will be there in 20 minutes to bring you somewhere safe. I'm not going anywhere until you explain what's happening. Isabella is not my wife, he said quietly. She's my brother's widow, and she has her own ideas about how our family business should be run. Ideas that don't align with mine. The revelation hit me like cold water. Not his wife. But that raised even more questions about what her relationship to him actually was, and why she felt threatened enough by me to issue ultimatums. Marcus, pack the bag, Maya, please. You saved my life, and now I need to save yours. The line went dead, leaving me staring at my phone and trying to process everything that had just happened. Isabella wasn't his wife, but felt entitled to make demands about his life. I was being watched by his men and threatened by his family. And somewhere in the city, people were apparently still trying to kill him. I looked around my small apartment, at the life I'd built through 4 years of hard work and careful budgeting. In 20 minutes, men would arrive to take me away from all of this, into a world I didn't understand and couldn't control. But as my hand moved to my stomach, to the tiny life growing there, I realized I didn't have a choice. Whatever was coming, I couldn't face it alone. I went to pack my bag, the weight of Isabella's warning echoing in my mind. The bullet you took for him was nothing compared to what's coming. As I folded clothes with my good arm, I caught sight of my reflection in the bedroom mirror. The woman looking back at me still looked like Maya Rodriguez, night shift nurse, but her eyes held a new knowledge, an awareness of danger that hadn't been there a week ago. By the time the knock came at my door, 3 sharp raps, polite but inevitable, I was ready. Or at least, I was as ready as someone could be when stepping into a world where bullets were just the beginning. The house wasn't what I'd expected. Set back from the road behind imposing iron gates, the Castellano estate looked more like a fortress than a home. 3 stories of weathered stone and tall windows that gleamed like watchful eyes in the afternoon sun. As our black SUV wound up the circular drive, I counted at least 6 men positioned around the grounds, their casual postures not quite hiding the weapons beneath their jackets. "Welcome to your new home," said Vincent, the man who'd picked me up from my apartment. He was Marcus's cousin, he'd explained during the silent ride, though the family resemblance was more in attitude than appearance. The same predatory stillness, the same way of watching everything while seeming to look at nothing. "Temporary home," I corrected, though my voice lacked conviction. Vincent's smile was knowing. Of course. The front door opened before we reached it, revealing Marcus himself. He'd discarded the sling, though I could see the careful way he held his left shoulder. In jeans and a dark sweater, he looked younger, more approachable, but the authority in his posture remained unchanged. This was his domain, and everything in it, including me, fell under his control. Maya. My name in his voice still did things to my pulse that I didn't want to acknowledge. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been kidnapped," I said, then immediately regretted the flip response when his expression darkened. "You weren't kidnapped," he said quietly. "You were rescued. There's a difference. He led me through rooms that spoke of generations of wealth, Persian rugs that probably cost more than my yearly salary, artwork that belonged in museums, furniture that had been crafted by masters. But there was something sterile about it all, as if the house were more museum than home. "This was my grandfather's house," Marcus said, noticing my examination of the surroundings. "He built it when he first came to America. 3 generations of Castellanos have lived here." "And now me," I said, the reality of my situation settling over me like a lead blanket. "Now you." He stopped in front of a tall window that looked out over manicured gardens. "Maya, what did Isabella tell you?" I thought of her threats, her desperation masked as authority, the way she'd spoken about Marcus as if he were a possession to be guarded. "That I should disappear. That you're not the kind of man who lets people leave once they've entered your world." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared out at the grounds. "She's not wrong about that," he said finally. "Once someone is under my protection, they tend to stay that way. And if I don't want your protection?" He turned to face me, his dark eyes holding mine with uncomfortable intensity. "Then you'll be dead within a week." The blunt statement hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "The men who tried to kill me aren't done, Maya. They failed, which means they're desperate. And desperate men make dangerous choices." He moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "You're a witness. More than that, you're a symbol of their failure. As long as you're alive, you're a reminder that Marcus Castellano has people willing to die for him." "I'm not willing to die for you," I protested. "I just reacted on instinct." "Are you sure about that?" His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb tracing the line of my cheekbone. "Because from where I was lying, bleeding on that concrete, it looked very much like a woman throwing herself between me and bullets. It looked like someone who'd made a choice." His touch sent unwanted heat through my body, an attraction I didn't want to feel and couldn't seem to control. This man was dangerous in ways I was only beginning to understand, but my body responded to him as if it didn't care about the consequences. "I should go," I said, though I made no move to step away from his touch. "Back to my apartment, my job, my life." "What life?" The question was gentle but ruthless. "The job that barely pays your bills? The apartment you can barely afford? The isolation, the struggle, the constant worry about money?" Each word hit like a targeted arrow, finding every insecurity I'd tried to hide. "It's my life. I built it myself. And now I'm offering you something better." His other hand came to rest on my waist, not quite pulling me closer, but establishing a connection I could feel like electricity. "Security, Maya. Safety. A future for your child that doesn't involve choosing between rent and groceries. And all I have to do is what? Become your kept woman?" His smile was slow and dangerous. "Is that what you think this is?" Before I could answer, the sound of heels clicking against marble echoed through the room. We sprang apart as Isabella Castellano swept in, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. "How touching," she said, her voice dripping with acid. The grieving widower finding comfort in his little nurse. Grieving widower. The words hit me like ice water. Marcus's expression went carefully blank, but I saw the pain that flashed through his eyes before he could hide it. "Isabella," Marcus said, his voice carrying a warning, "you're not welcome here. This is family business, Marcus. She doesn't belong." Isabella's gaze fixed on me with venomous intensity. "Did he tell you about Carmen? About what happened to her?" "Isabella, enough." But she ignored him, moving closer to me with predatory grace. "Carmen was his wife, Maya. His real wife. Mother of his unborn child. She died 6 months ago when the Romano family decided to send Marcus a message. The room seemed to tilt around me. Wife, child, both dead because of the world Marcus lived in, the enemies he'd made, the violence that followed him like a shadow. They killed her while she was shopping for baby clothes, Isabella continued, her voice soft and cruel. Cut her brake lines and watched her car go off the bridge. Marcus found the sonogram in her purse when they pulled her from the water. I looked at Marcus, seeing the confirmation in his stricken expression. This wasn't just about protection or gratitude or even attraction. This was about a man who'd lost everything trying to replace what he'd had torn away. Is that what this is? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Am I some kind of substitute? A pregnant woman to help you forget the one you lost? Maya, no. Because that's what it looks like, I continued, backing away from him. The timing, the attention, the way you looked at me when you realized I was pregnant. You weren't seeing me, were you? You were seeing her. The pain in Marcus's eyes was answer enough, but when he spoke, his voice was steady, controlled. Carmen is dead. You're alive. And whether you believe it or not, that matters to me. It matters because I remind you of what you lost. It matters because losing you would destroy me the same way losing her did. The admission was raw, honest, and it hit me like a physical blow. Yes, Maya, you're pregnant, alone, in danger. Yes, that reminds me of Carmen. But when I look at you, when I hear your voice, when I think about those bullets that could have killed you. He broke off, running a hand through his hair. You're not her replacement. You're something else entirely. Isabella laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. How romantic, the widower and his savior. But tell me, Maya, what happens when the novelty wears off? When Marcus gets bored of playing protector? When his grief turns to guilt, and he starts blaming you for surviving when she didn't? The words were designed to wound, and they found their mark. Every insecurity I'd ever had about not being enough, not being worth protecting, not being worth choosing, rose up to strangle me. Stop. Marcus's voice carried the authority of a man used to being obeyed. You've said enough. Have I? Isabella turned to face him fully. Because I think Maya deserves to know what she's really getting into. About the Romano family's promise to kill anyone you care about. About the fact that being under your protection is what got Carmen killed in the first place. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat, the distant sound of voices from somewhere else in the house, the whisper of wind against the windows. But mostly, I could hear the truth in Isabella's words echoing through my head. Being under Marcus's protection hadn't saved his wife. It had made her a target. I want to leave, I said finally. I want to go home. You can't, Marcus said simply. Your apartment has been compromised. The Romano family knows where you live, where you work, what car you drive. If you go back to your old life, you'll be dead within 24 hours. Then I'll leave the city. Start over somewhere else. With what money? What identification? What plan? His questions were gentle, but relentless. Maya, you're 8 weeks pregnant with no savings and no family to help you. Even if you could disappear completely, how long do you think you'd survive on your own? The cruel reality of my situation crashed over me. I was trapped, caught between a world that wanted to kill me and a man whose protection came with a price I wasn't sure I could pay. What do you want from me? I asked, the words torn from somewhere deep in my chest. Marcus moved closer, his hands coming up to frame my face. I want you to trust me. I want you to let me keep you safe. He paused, his thumbs brushing across my cheekbones. I want you to give us a chance to become something real. Even knowing I might die like she did? even knowing I might fail to protect you the way I failed to protect her. His honesty was brutal and beautiful. Maya, I can't promise you'll be safe. I can't promise this world won't try to destroy everything I care about. But I can promise that I'll spend every breath in my body trying to keep you alive. Isabella made a sound of disgust. How many promises did you make to Carmen, Marcus? How well did those work out? The words hit their target. Marcus's hands dropped from my face, his expression going cold. Get out, Isabella. Now. This isn't over, she said, but she was already moving toward the door. And when she ends up like Carmen, when her blood is on your hands too, remember that I tried to save her. The door slammed behind her, leaving Marcus and me alone with the weight of everything that had been said. I could see the pain in his eyes, the guilt that ate at him, the fear that history might repeat itself. She's right, isn't she? I asked quietly. About Carmen, about what happened to her. Marcus was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. Carmen died because I thought I could keep my family and my business separate. I thought love was enough to protect her. He met my eyes. I was wrong. And yet you're asking me to make the same choice she did. No. His voice was firm. I'm asking you to make a different choice. Carmen lived in the light, away from my world, thinking that would keep her safe. I'm asking you to live in the shadows with me, where I can actually protect you. The distinction was subtle but crucial. He wasn't offering me a normal life with occasional danger. He was offering me a dangerous life with constant protection. What does that mean exactly? Living in the shadows with you. Marcus moved to the window, staring out at his fortress-like grounds. It means you stay here, under my protection. It means you let me provide for you and your child. It means you become part of my world, with all the benefits and dangers that entails. And in return, he turned back to me, his dark eyes holding mine. In return, you let me care about you. You let me try to earn your trust. You give us time to see what we might become. The offer hung between us, neither promise nor threat, but something more complex. A proposal for a partnership, born out of violence and shaped by necessity, but carrying the possibility of becoming something deeper. I need time to think, I said. Marcus nodded. You'll have it. But Maya. He moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. While you're thinking, remember that the alternative isn't your old life. That's gone. The alternative is running, hiding, constantly looking over your shoulder, raising your child in fear and poverty. He was right, and we both knew it. The moment I'd thrown myself between him and those bullets, I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. There was no going back to who I'd been before. I'll show you to your room, he said finally. You can rest, settle in. We'll talk more tomorrow. As he led me up a grand staircase toward the guest wing, I caught sight of a photograph on the landing. A beautiful woman with dark hair and laughing eyes, her hand resting on a small bump visible beneath her summer dress. Carmen. The wife he'd lost. The life he'd failed to protect. I studied her face, looking for similarities between us, trying to understand what Marcus saw when he looked at me. But Carmen had been radiant, confident, glowing with the kind of happiness I'd never known. Whatever Marcus thought he saw in me, whatever he hoped we might become, I wasn't her. And maybe that was exactly the point. She was beautiful, I said softly. Marcus paused beside me, his gaze fixed on the photograph. She was everything I thought I wanted, he said quietly. But she's gone, Maya. And you're here. The simple statement carried more weight than poetry. Not a comparison or a replacement, but an acknowledgement of reality. Carmen was his past. I might be his future. if I was brave enough to choose it. The explosion shattered the pre-dawn silence, hurling me from sleep into terror as windows throughout the mansion rattled in their frames. I was on my feet before I was fully awake, my heart hammering against my ribs as the sound of running footsteps echoed through the corridors. Through my bedroom window, I could see orange flames licking at the darkness where the front gate had been. They'd found us. My door burst open without warning, revealing Marcus in tactical gear I'd never seen him wear before. Gone was the sophisticated businessman. In his place stood someone harder, more dangerous, someone whose world was measured in violence and survival. "We need to move," he said, his voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. "Now." "What's happening?" "The Romano family just declared war." He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door. "They blew up the front gate and they're coming up the drive." The sound of automatic gunfire erupted from somewhere below us, rapid bursts that made my knees weak. This wasn't the single shots that had nearly killed us in the parking garage. This was something bigger, more coordinated, more deadly. "Where are we going?" I asked, as Marcus led me down a corridor I'd never seen before, toward what looked like a blank wall. "Safe room," he said, pressing his palm against a hidden scanner. The wall slid away, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. It's reinforced, has its own air supply, communications equipment. You'll be safe there. "What about you?" His jaw tightened as another explosion rocked the house, closer this time. "I have to coordinate our defenses. My men are good, but the Romanos brought an army." The staircase led to a room that looked like something from a spy movie. Banks of monitors showing feeds from security cameras throughout the estate, communications equipment, enough food and water for weeks. But what caught my attention were the weapons mounted on the walls. This wasn't just a safe room, it was a command center designed for war. "How long have you been expecting this?" I asked. Marcus was already moving to the monitors, his fingers flying over keyboards as he brought the surveillance system online. "Since the day they killed Carmen," he said without looking at me. "I knew they'd eventually come for anyone I cared about." On the screens I could see the battle unfolding. Black-clad figures moved through the gardens with military precision, while Marcus's men returned fire from defensive positions. But even I could see the attackers had the advantage of numbers and planning. "There are so many of them," I whispered. 30, maybe 40 men, Marcus said, his voice grim. "They're not just trying to kill us. They're trying to send a message to anyone who might think about standing against them." A new voice crackled through the radio system, speaking in rapid Italian. Marcus's expression darkened as he listened. "What is it?" "They have the house surrounded. Vincent and his team are pinned down in the east wing. Tony's group is holding the main entrance, but they're running low on ammunition." He turned to me, his face set in hard lines. "Maya, I need you to understand something. If they get through our defenses, if they make it to this room, you cannot let them take you alive." The words hit me like ice water. "What are you saying?" He moved to one of the weapon racks, removing a pistol and checking its ammunition. "I'm saying that what they did to Carmen will seem merciful compared to what they'll do to you." He held out the gun. "Do you know how to use this?" I stared at the weapon, its weight somehow both lighter and heavier than I'd expected. "Basic training from the hospital. Active shooter protocols. Good. Point, squeeze, keep squeezing until the threat stops moving." His hand covered mine on the grip. "Promise me, Maya. If it comes to that, promise me you won't let them take you." The request was asking me to promise my own death if capture seemed inevitable. But looking at the monitors, seeing the organized violence moving through the estate, I understood what he wasn't saying. There were fates worse than death. "I promise," I whispered. The radio crackled again, this time in English. "Boss, they're in the house. South entrance has been breached." Marcus cursed in what sounded like Italian, then spoke into his headset. Fall back to secondary positions. Make them work for every inch. On the monitors, I watched dark figures moving through the corridors of the house, systematically clearing rooms with professional efficiency. These weren't street thugs or desperate criminals. These were soldiers. "Who are they?" I asked. "Ex-military, mostly. The Romano family has been recruiting from overseas, building a private army." Marcus's attention was split between the monitors and his radio communications. "They've been planning this for months." A new explosion, this one inside the house, made the lights flicker. On one of the monitors, I saw debris falling from the ceiling as smoke filled a hallway. "They're using grenades," Marcus said grimly. "They're not planning to leave any witnesses." The systematic advance continued, room by room, floor by floor. I watched Marcus's men fall back, fighting a retreating action that everyone knew was doomed. The attackers had too many advantages: numbers, equipment, planning, and the element of surprise. "There has to be something we can do," I said. Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying the tactical display. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. "There is, but you're not going to like it. Tell me." He turned from the monitors to face me fully. "I can call in favors. Federal agents who owe me, local police who are on my payroll, even some military contacts. But doing that will expose everything: my business, my operations, my network. It'll be the end of the Castellano family as a power in this city. And if you don't, we die here, tonight, along with everyone who's tried to protect us." The choice he was describing wasn't just tactical, it was existential. Save our lives by destroying everything he'd built, or maintain his empire and die defending it. "What would Carmen want you to do?" I asked quietly. The question hit him like a physical blow. I could see the pain flash across his features before he controlled it. "Carmen wanted me to walk away from all of this," he said. "She begged me to take her somewhere far from the city, somewhere we could raise our child in peace." His voice grew hollow. "I told her I couldn't abandon my responsibilities, that I had duties to my family, my organization." "And now?" Marcus looked at the monitors showing his men dying to defend his home, then at me holding a gun I might have to use on myself to avoid a fate worse than death. Now, I think she was right. The decision hung between us, the weight of it enormous. Everything he was, everything he'd built, everything his family had worked 3 generations to create, balanced against our lives and the life of the child growing inside me. The radio crackled with urgent voices. "Boss, we're down to 12 men. They're on the 2nd floor. ETA to your position is maybe 10 minutes. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, I saw something that might have been relief. "Do it," I said before he could speak. "Make the calls. Maya. You said yourself that keeping your family and your business separate is what got Carmen killed. Maybe it's time to choose family over business." He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant when he made his decision. Moving to a different communications console, he began placing calls with rapid efficiency. "Agent Morrison, it's Marcus Castellano. I'm ready to make that deal we discussed. Yes, I know what I'm saying. Metropolitan Safe House, federal protection, full cooperation with your investigation into the Romano family. No, not just information. I'm talking about complete testimony, financial records, everything." The words were a death sentence for the world he'd known, but they were a lifeline for the world he might still have. As he continued making calls, to the FBI, to federal prosecutors, to contacts in agencies I'd never heard of, I watched the monitors and saw something changing. New vehicles were arriving at the estate, but these weren't more attackers. These were federal agents, local SWAT teams, even what looked like military personnel. The cavalry was coming, but the price was everything Marcus had spent his life building. "Attention Romano forces! A voice boomed through loudspeakers that had appeared with the federal agents. "This is the FBI. You are surrounded. Lay down your weapons and surrender immediately." On the monitors, I watched the attacking force suddenly find themselves caught between Marcus's remaining defenders and a federal perimeter that had materialized around the estate. The hunters had become the hunted. "It's over," Marcus said, his voice carrying a mixture of relief and profound loss. "We're safe." But as the gunfire outside began to die down, as federal agents moved through the house securing it room by room, I realized that while the immediate danger was ending, everything else was just beginning. "What happens now?" I asked. Marcus was watching the monitors as federal agents took Romano soldiers into custody. "Now I become a federal witness. Protected custody, new identities, relocation to somewhere far from here." He turned to me. "If you want it." "If I want it?" "You saved my life, Maya. I owe you everything. But I can't ask you to give up your entire existence to disappear into witness protection with a man you barely know." The offer was both generous and heartbreaking. He was giving me a choice: stay with him and disappear into a new life under federal protection, or walk away from all of this and somehow rebuild on my own. But as I looked at him, at this man who'd just sacrificed everything he'd built to keep me safe, I realized the choice had already been made. Somewhere between taking a bullet for him and holding a gun to defend our lives, between learning about his dead wife and watching him choose my safety over his empire, I'd made my decision. "Where are we going?" I asked. The smile that crossed his face was the first genuine one I'd seen from him, free of the weight and darkness that usually shadowed his expressions. "Somewhere warm," he said. "Somewhere far from here. Somewhere we can figure out who we are when we're not running from bullets or hiding from enemies." Outside, the federal agents were restoring order, arresting the survivors of the Romano assault force, and beginning the complex process of dismantling a criminal empire. Inside the safe room, Marcus Castellano was becoming someone new, not a crime boss or a widower haunted by guilt, but simply a man who'd chosen love over power. "Maya?" His voice was soft, uncertain in a way I'd never heard from him. "Yes?" "Thank you for giving me something worth protecting, something worth starting over for." As federal agents knocked on the safe room door to escort us to our new lives, I realized that taking a bullet for Marcus Castellano had been the easy part. Learning to love him, to trust him, to build something real from the ashes of violence and loss, that would be the real challenge. But looking at him now, seeing the man beneath the reputation and the power, I thought it might be a challenge worth accepting. The safe house in Oregon was nothing like Marcus's estate. A modest 2-story colonial on 3 acres of forest, surrounded by federal agents pretending to be neighbors and groundskeepers. No marble floors or Persian rugs, no artwork worth millions. Just comfortable furniture, a working fireplace, and the kind of normalcy I'd never associated with Marcus Castellano. But it was the photograph hidden in his suitcase that changed everything. I found it by accident 3 weeks into our new life, searching for an extra phone charger while Marcus met with his federal handlers. The image fell from between the pages of a book, landing face up on the hardwood floor of our temporary bedroom. Carmen. But not the glowing, radiant Carmen from the photograph at the estate. This Carmen looked exactly like me. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, same facial structure. We could have been sisters. The resemblance was so striking it made my hands shake as I picked up the photograph, studying every detail. She was wearing scrubs, hospital scrubs, and her name tag was partially visible. Carmen Rodriguez, RN. Rodriguez. The same last name I'd given Marcus when we first met. The sound of the front door opening made me quickly slip the photograph back into the book, but my mind was reeling. The similarities weren't coincidental. Marcus hadn't found me by chance in that parking garage. He'd been looking for someone exactly like me. "Maya?" His voice echoed through the house. I'm back. I came downstairs slowly, studying his face with new eyes. The way he looked at me, the intensity in his gaze. Was he seeing me, or was he seeing her? How did the meeting go? I asked, my voice carefully neutral. Good. The Romano prosecutions are moving forward. 3 more arrests yesterday. He moved to the kitchen, beginning to prepare dinner with the domestic ease he'd developed since we'd been here. The agents think we might be able to testify via video link instead of in person. Less exposure. I watched him cook, this powerful man who'd once commanded an empire now carefully seasoning pasta sauce in a safe house kitchen. Everything about our situation felt surreal, like playing house while the real world continued somewhere else. Marcus, I said carefully, tell me about how you met Carmen. His hand stilled on the wooden spoon. Why? Because I've been thinking about what Isabella said. About me being a replacement. About the timing. I moved closer, studying his profile. She was a nurse, wasn't she? The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. When Marcus finally turned to face me, the guilt in his eyes was confirmation enough. Maya, how long were you looking for someone like her? The question came out sharper than I'd intended. How long had you been watching the hospital, looking for a pregnant nurse who looked enough like your dead wife to ease your conscience? It wasn't like that. Wasn't it? I pulled out the photograph, watching his face crumble as he saw it. Carmen Rodriguez, RN. Same last name, same profession, same appearance. That's one hell of a coincidence, Marcus. He sat down heavily at the kitchen table, suddenly looking older than his years. I never meant for you to find that. But I did. So now I need the truth. All of it. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his hands folded in front of him. When he spoke, his voice was hollow. After Carmen died, I couldn't function. Couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't run my business. Vincent and the others were getting worried. About me, about the organization. I was becoming a liability. So you decided to find a replacement wife? No. His voice was sharp. I decided to find the people responsible for her death and make them pay. But during the investigation, I learned something that changed everything. He stood, moving to the window that looked out over the forest. Carmen wasn't random, Maya. The Romanos didn't kill her just to hurt me. They killed her because she'd discovered something about their operation. Something that could have destroyed them. The revelation hit me like cold water. What did she discover? Money laundering through the hospital where she worked, patients who didn't exist, treatments that were never performed, medications that disappeared into the black market. Carmen was working night shifts in the ICU when she started noticing discrepancies. She was investigating them without realizing how dangerous it was. She thought she was uncovering insurance fraud, maybe some corruption. She had no idea she was threatening a multi-million-dollar operation. His voice grew bitter. She was going to report it to the hospital administration. The Romanos found out and decided to eliminate the threat. The pieces were falling into place, but they created a picture I didn't want to see. So you started watching the hospital, looking for someone else who might have noticed what Carmen noticed. Looking for someone who might be in the same danger she'd been in, Marcus corrected. And yes, I was specifically looking for night shift nurses. The Romanos' operation ran during those hours when oversight was minimal. And you found me. I found several nurses who worked the patterns that might have put them at risk. You were one of them. He turned back to face me. But Maya, I was watching you to protect you, not to replace Carmen. Then why? I gestured between us, at the domestic scene we'd been playing out for weeks. Why this? Why bring me into your life? Because when I saw you take that bullet for me, when I saw you risk everything for a stranger, I realized you weren't just someone who needed protection. His voice grew softer. You were someone worth protecting, someone worth changing my life for. But I look exactly like her. Yes, he admitted. And at first, that was part of the attraction. I won't lie about that. But Maya, you're not Carmen. You're stronger than she was, braver. Carmen discovered the Romanos operation by accident. You threw yourself into gunfire on purpose. The distinction he was drawing felt important, but I wasn't ready to accept it. How do I know this isn't all an elaborate fantasy? How do I know you don't look at me and see her ghost? Marcus moved closer, his hands coming up to frame my face. Because Carmen would never have asked me to give up everything to save her. She wanted me to choose her over my business, but she never would have asked me to destroy myself for her sake. His thumbs brushed across my cheekbones. You did. You told me to make those calls, to sacrifice everything I'd built. Carmen wanted me to walk away from my world. You helped me burn it down. The words should have been comforting, but they raised a new and terrifying possibility. What if that's what you needed me for? What if the reason you were drawn to me wasn't love or even grief, but because you needed someone to give you permission to destroy yourself? The question hung between us, stark and brutal. I could see it hit home in the way his hands dropped from my face, in the sudden distance in his eyes. Maybe, he said quietly. Maybe that's exactly what happened. The honesty was devastating and liberating at the same time. Here was the truth neither of us had wanted to face. Our relationship might have been built on his need for self-destruction, rather than genuine feeling. So where does that leave us? I asked. Before Marcus could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something about it made my stomach clench with dread. Don't answer it, Marcus said, but I was already swiping to accept the call. Maya Rodriguez? The voice was cultured, elderly, with an accent that reminded me of Marcus's, but carried more authority. Who is this? My name is Antonio Romano. I believe you know my nephew Vincent. The name hit me like a physical blow. Romano, the family that had tried to kill us, that had murdered Carmen, that Marcus had just helped the federal government destroy. I don't know anyone named Vincent, I lied. Of course you do. Vincent Castellano, Marcus's cousin. Except his real name is Vincent Romano. He's been my man inside the Castellano organization for over 2 years. The world tilted around me. Vincent, who'd picked me up from my apartment, who'd been part of Marcus's inner circle, who'd known every detail of our defenses and our plans. You're lying. Am I? How do you think we found the safe house, Miss Rodriguez? How do you think we knew exactly when the federal agents would be rotating shifts? I looked at Marcus, seeing the same terrible understanding dawning in his eyes. Vincent, his trusted cousin, his right-hand man, had been feeding information to the enemy for years. What do you want? Marcus asked, taking the phone from my nerveless fingers. What I've always wanted, nephew. The complete destruction of everyone who betrayed my family. Antonio's voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. Vincent tells me your federal friends think you're safe in Oregon. He also tells me that your little nurse is carrying a child. Marcus's face went ashen. If you touch her, I won't have to. You see, the information Vincent provided about your testimony hasn't just been useful to us. We've shared it with certain other interested parties. Families in New York, Chicago, Miami, who have their own reasons to want you silenced. The implication was clear. It wasn't just the Romanos hunting us anymore. Marcus's testimony had made him a target for every criminal organization that might be exposed by his revelations. There's a contract on both of you now, Antonio continued. $500,000 for Marcus, dead or alive. $250,000 for the woman who saved his life. Consider it payment for services rendered. The line went dead, leaving us staring at each other in the sudden silence of our compromised safe house. "We have to run," Marcus said, already moving toward the bedroom. "Now." Vincent knows everything. Our location, our security protocols, probably our new identities. "Where can we go?" I asked, following him as he began throwing essentials into a bag. If Vincent's been feeding them information for 2 years, what secrets do we have left? "None," Marcus admitted, "which means we're on our own now. No federal protection, no safe houses, no backup plans." As we prepared to flee into an uncertain and dangerous night, I realized that everything we'd built together, the safety, the domesticity, the tentative trust, had been an illusion. Vincent's betrayal hadn't just exposed our location. It had revealed that we'd never been safe at all. But as Marcus handed me a gun and checked the magazine in his own weapon, as we prepared to face a world where everyone wanted us dead, I found myself making a choice that surprised me. "I'm staying with you," I said. He paused in his preparations. "Maya, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." I thought of Carmen, of Isabella's warnings, of all the reasons this was impossible and dangerous, and probably doomed. Maybe you did find me, because I reminded you of her. Maybe this started because you needed someone to help you destroy yourself. But right now, in this moment, I'm choosing to stay. Why? I thought of the man I'd seen sacrifice everything to keep me safe, who'd given up his empire for the chance at something real. Whatever his motivations had been, whatever ghosts he'd been chasing, the choice he'd made in that safe room had been genuine. Because destroying your old life doesn't mean destroying yourself, I said. Maybe it means finally becoming who you were supposed to be. As we slipped out into the Oregon forest, beginning what might be our final flight together, I realized that Vincent's betrayal had done something unexpected. It had stripped away all the illusions, all the comfortable lies, all the federal protection that had let us pretend we were safe. Now we had nothing left but each other, and the choice to keep fighting for what we might become. It would have to be enough. The abandoned cabin in the Montana wilderness had no electricity, no running water, and no cell phone reception. After 3 weeks of running, of changing cars and identities and sleeping in different motels every night, it felt like sanctuary. Marcus had found it through contacts that predated Vincent's betrayal, old favors from his grandfather's era that even his cousin hadn't known about. But sanctuary was an illusion when half the criminal underworld had a price on your head. I was chopping wood behind the cabin when I heard the helicopter, its distant thrum cutting through the mountain silence like a death knell. Marcus was inside, monitoring the police scanner we'd bought in the last town, but I could see him through the window as he grabbed the rifle and moved to the front door. "Maya," his voice carried across the clearing. "Get inside. Now." I dropped the axe and ran, my 7-month belly making me awkward and slow. The pregnancy had become impossible to hide, my body changing daily as the baby grew. Marcus had become increasingly protective as the weeks passed, his devotion manifesting in ways that were both touching and terrifying. He'd kill anyone who threatened us, without hesitation, without mercy, without a second thought. "How many?" I asked, joining him at the window as the helicopter circled overhead. "Just one bird, but there will be ground teams too." Marcus was checking his weapons with the mechanical precision of a man who'd done this too many times. "They've found us again." "How is that possible? We've been so careful." Marcus's expression was grim. "Vincent. He knows every contact I've ever made, every safe house my family used for 3 generations. There's nowhere we can run that he won't eventually find." The helicopter was landing now, in the clearing about a 1/4 mile from the cabin. Through the trees, I could see men in tactical gear emerging, spreading out in a professional formation that spoke of military training. 10 men, Maybe 12, Marcus murmured, watching through binoculars. Armed and equipped for a siege. I thought of all the times we'd run, all the close calls and narrow escapes. Each time the hunters had gotten closer, more organized, more determined. This felt different, final. Marcus, I said quietly, what if we don't run this time? He looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. Maya, you're 7 months pregnant. We can't fight a dozen trained killers. We can't keep running either. I moved closer to him, placing my hand over his on the rifle. Look at us. Look at what we've become. We're not living, Marcus. We're just surviving. It was true. The past 3 months had reduced us to our most basic elements. Fight or flight, predator or prey. The man I'd fallen in love with, the one who'd sacrificed his empire to protect me, had been replaced by someone harder, more ruthless. Someone who saw threat in every shadow and responded to danger with increasing violence. Our baby is going to be born into this, I continued. Always running, always hiding, always afraid. Is that the life you want for our child? The possessive pronoun slipped out naturally. Somewhere along the way, the baby had become ours, not just mine. Marcus had claimed us both with a devotion that was absolute and sometimes frightening in its intensity. What are you suggesting? He asked. Before I could answer, my phone, the untraceable burner we'd bought last week, began to ring. The caller ID showed a number I recognized. Vincent Castellano. Don't, Marcus warned, but I was already answering. Hello, Vincent. Maya. His voice carried the same charm it always had, as if he hadn't spent months hunting us like animals. You sound tired. What do you want? To make you an offer, a way out of this that doesn't end with both of you dead. I looked at Marcus, seeing the rage building in his eyes. Vincent's betrayal had cut deeper than any physical wound, the violation of family trust, something that Marcus might never forgive. I'm listening, I said. Surrender Marcus to us. Testify that he coerced you, that you were an unwilling participant in his escape. The Federal Witness Protection Program will take you back, relocate you somewhere safe. You and your baby can have a normal life. And Marcus? Vincent's pause was answer enough. Marcus chose his path when he betrayed the family, Maya. But you're innocent in all this. You were just trying to help an injured man. The offer was seductive and horrible. Safety for me and my child, purchased with Marcus's life. A return to the normal world I'd lost the moment I'd thrown myself between him and those bullets. No, I said simply. Maya, be reasonable. You're 7 months pregnant, living like a fugitive, constantly in danger. This isn't sustainable. I said no, Vincent. Then you're both going to die today. Those men surrounding your cabin aren't going to accept surrender. They have orders to eliminate both of you. I looked through the window at the tactical teams moving through the forest, drawing their net tighter around our refuge. Why? I asked. Why does it have to be both of us? Because you saved his life, Vincent said, his voice growing colder. Because your testimony could still destroy our operations. Because you represent something that the families can't allow to exist. Which is? Proof that Marcus Castellano chose love over power. Proof that loyalty can be bought with something other than fear or money. Vincent paused. You made him weak, Maya, and weakness is contagious. The line went dead, leaving Marcus and me alone with the sound of our hunters drawing closer. He's right, Marcus said quietly. This is my fault. All of it. No. I moved to face him fully. This started long before you met me. The Romanos, the violence, the betrayals. That was your world before I existed. But you got pulled into it because of me. You and our baby are in danger because I couldn't let you go. The guilt in his voice was devastating. For months, I'd watched him blame himself for every close call, every moment of danger, every night we'd spent sleeping in cheap motels and looking over our shoulders. "Marcus, look at me." I placed my hands on either side of his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. "I stayed. Every time you gave me a chance to leave, every time you offered to disappear and let me return to my old life, I chose to stay. That's not your fault. That's my choice." "Why?" The question was raw, honest. "Why would you choose this? Why would you choose me when I've brought you nothing but danger?" I thought of all the reasons I could give him. The way he'd sacrificed everything to protect me. The gentle way he touched my growing belly when he thought I was sleeping. The fierce devotion in his eyes when he looked at me, as if I were something precious and miraculous. But the real answer was simpler than all of that. "Because I love you," I said. "Not the man you were, not the empire you built, not the power you wielded. I love the man who chose to destroy his own world rather than let harm come to me." The confession hung between us, simple and devastating. Through all the running and hiding, through all the violence and betrayal, that truth had remained constant. Marcus pulled me against him, his arms wrapping around me and our unborn child with desperate intensity. "Maya, I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. More than my business, more than my family, more than my own survival. I know," I whispered against his neck. "I've known since that night you called in federal agents. You chose us over everything else." The sound of breaking glass from the cabin's rear window interrupted our moment. Smoke began to fill the main room. Tear gas, designed to force us out into the open. "They're moving," Marcus said, grabbing his rifle and moving to the front window. "Stay low, stay behind me." But as we prepared for our final stand, as Marcus checked his weapons and calculated angles of fire, I realized there was one last choice I could make. "Marcus," I said, pulling the pistol from my waistband, "if we don't survive this—" "We will," he said fiercely. "I won't let anything happen to you or our baby. But if we don't," I continued, "I need you to know that I don't regret any of it. Not the danger, not the running, not choosing you over safety. This life, these months with you, they've been worth everything." Marcus turned from the window to look at me, and in his eyes, I saw something that took my breath away. Not just love, but worship. Complete. Absolute devotion that would burn down the world before letting harm come to me. "Maya," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life in that parking garage, but you saved my soul when you chose to stay with me." The first shots rang out, bullets splintering the cabin's wooden walls. Marcus returned fire with deadly precision, each shot calculated to protect the woman and child behind him. I crouched low, one hand on my belly and the other gripping my pistol, ready to fight for the life we'd built together. But as the gun battle raged around us, as Marcus held off trained killers with nothing but determination and love, I heard something that changed everything. Sirens, multiple vehicles, approaching fast. Through the smoke and chaos, I saw federal agents emerging from the forest, flanking the tactical teams that had been hunting us. A voice boomed through a megaphone. "FBI, drop your weapons." The shooting stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Through the window, I watched the men who'd been trying to kill us suddenly find themselves surrounded by federal agents. "How?" I asked, but Marcus was already moving toward the door, his rifle lowered. "Insurance," he said, opening the door to reveal Agent Morrison, the federal prosecutor who'd handled our original testimony. I gave him coordinates to every safe house my family ever used, including this one, with instructions to check on us if we went silent for more than 72 hours. Morrison approached with his hands visible, his expression a mixture of relief and exasperation. "Mr. Castellano, Mrs. Castellano," he said, nodding to both of us. "You're under federal protection again. The Romano prosecutions are complete, and Vincent Castellano has been arrested on charges of racketeering and murder." Mrs. Castellano. The title sent a warm shock through me. At some point during our months on the run, Marcus had started introducing me as his wife. Now it seemed the federal government had made it official. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now you testify one final time, and then you disappear forever. New identities, new location, federal pension to ensure you never have to worry about money." Morrison paused. "Your old life is over, but you get to keep the new one you've built." As federal agents secured the scene and arrested the surviving members of the hunting party, Marcus took my hand and led me away from the cabin where we'd made our last stand. "So," he said, squeezing my fingers gently, "Maya Castellano, how does that sound?" I thought of the journey that had brought us here, from a parking garage shooting to a Montana wilderness, from a chance encounter to a love that had survived everything the world could throw at us. "It sounds perfect," I said. 6 months later, in a small coastal town where no one knew our real names, I gave birth to a daughter with dark hair and her father's intense eyes. Marcus held her with the same careful reverence he'd shown me from the beginning, as if she were something miraculous and fragile. We named her Carmen Hope. Carmen for the woman whose death had started our story. Hope for the future we'd fought to build together. Sometimes, when I watched Marcus reading to our daughter, or teaching her to walk on the beach behind our house, I thought about the night in that hospital when he'd first asked me to trust him. I'd been a struggling nurse with no family and an uncertain future. Now I was a mother, a wife, a woman who'd found her place in the world by choosing love over safety. The man I'd saved in that parking garage had become the man who'd saved me in return, not from bullets or danger, but from a life half-lived, from settling for survival instead of reaching for something extraordinary. Vincent's betrayal had been meant to destroy us. Instead, it had stripped away everything that wasn't essential, leaving only what mattered: our love for each other and our determination to build something lasting from the ashes of the past. The federal agents who checked on us monthly called us success story. Former criminals who'd chosen cooperation over continued violence, who'd built productive new lives under the witness protection program. But we knew the truth was simpler and more complex than that. We were two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and decided that what we'd built together was worth more than anything we'd left behind. Every morning, I woke up in the arms of a man who'd chosen me over everything else in his world. Every night, he fell asleep, holding me as if I might disappear if he let go. It was a love born from violence and shaped by danger, tested by betrayal and proven by sacrifice. But it was real, lasting, and ours. And that was worth every bullet, every chase, every moment of fear we'd endured to find it. The nurse who'd thrown herself between a stranger and gunfire had found her home in the arms of the man she'd saved. The crime boss who'd lost everything had discovered that sometimes losing everything was the only way to find what actually mattered. Together, we'd learned that love wasn't just about finding someone worth living for. Sometimes, it was about finding someone worth changing your entire world for. And in a small house by the ocean, with our daughter playing at our feet and our future stretching out before us like an endless horizon, that's exactly what we'd done.